Hi, I'm Erica Duffy with Retirement Benefits Institute, and today joining me is Tommy Neesmith. He is the Executive Vice President of Christy Capital Management and also a Federal Retirement Benefit Trainer for Retirement Benefits Institute. Thank you for joining us, Tommy.
Yeah, Erica, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Good.
We have a lot to discuss with what is going on right now. Our world is in a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and what we can do for federal employees right now is bring some peace and clarity to retirement and understanding how the COVID-19 affects you in your retirement, but how you can also positively react to it. So I've talked to a lot of federal employees recently, and their first reaction is, I don't think I can retire right now. And their second is, I don't think I want to look at my TSP, or maybe I should just put everything into the G fund. What would you say about that?
Well, it's good questions, and they're natural questions during this time. A lot's changed over the past 6 to 8 weeks in financial markets, especially a lot from household income has changed in a lot of cases. I would think you really need to take a step back before we talk about investing and investments. We need to step back and take a look at the budget. I know I just said a dirty word, and I didn't mean to do that. Maybe this can be edited out, but that word budget oftentimes is overlooked in crisis like we have right now. One of the things that we need to make sure we do is the budget. We need to make sure that if you're in a situation, regardless of COVID-19 or anything, you have a budget in place. That way you can really tell where cash flow is going. So without that budget, it would be really hard for me to make a determination on whether someone should or shouldn't retire. So budgeting, number one, making sure that you have a budget and that you're reviewing that budget often, not just once a year or every 2 or 3 years, but maybe at least monthly, quarterly should be a goal to do that. So now that you have your budget in place, you ask about moving my funds to G Fund. If you're like most of us, we have experienced quite the roller coaster ride over the past few weeks. And that roller coaster ride is very emotional. I am wired just like you are, just like our listeners are, and I have emotions as well. But what I've learned is it's kind of like riding a roller coaster. And, you know, the people who get hurt the most on a roller coaster ride are those who jump off in the middle of the ride. So moving the funds to G Fund right now may not be the best option. You're going to do counterproductive what we tell investors and what we're taught in investing, and that's to buy low and sell high. Well, you actually would be selling low, right, and locking in somewhat of your losses by placing those funds in G Fund. So moving the funds to G Fund, probably not the best thing to do right now.
So moving your funds to G Fund would basically be a knee-jerk reaction to what's going on, thinking you're going into the safe area, but not necessarily the best thing for you as an investor or even for your life in general for the future.
Yeah, that's correct. And remember, investing is long-term. When we're talking about your federal retirement, we've got a plan for a long life. It's long-term, and history tells us the returns will come back.
I think that's great advice, and I'd like to know a little bit more about understanding our investor profile. We've talked about this at Retirement Benefits Institute some, but that is still something that's a little bit, there's a little bit of confusion about that. Can you help us clarify that?
Yeah, I hope so. One of the things that really this downturn in the market provides us as investors a chance to do, and that's to take a step back and reevaluate our investor profile. And there are a few things we need to do in order to do that accurately. Number one is determine your investor profile, right? Not your neighbors, not your office mates, but your investor profile. And that includes looking at your risk tolerance level. Maybe you are a little heavy weighted in CS&I fund during this recent bull market we've experienced. And now with the correction happening, you're beginning to realize, you know, that's really not who I am. So we have to determine who you are as an investor. There are several things that go into that. You can see your time horizon, your investment experience, also the stage of life you're at, your lifestyle. What are your liquidity needs? And when I say that, I mean, how much cash do you need to survive on for the next 3 to 5 years? That's your liquidity needs that you have there. So we've got to, number one, determine who you are as an investor and what makes sense for your financial plan. The second thing I would look at is, now that we kind of know who we are as an investor, we have to allocate our funds appropriately. Within the TSP, you have your 5 funds available, and then you also have the life cycle funds, which contains those 5 funds. So now we know who you are as an investor, and we can allocate your TSP appropriately by doing that and sticking with that plan. Again, I didn't say let's be emotional and get off the roller coaster. Let's allocate appropriately. Let's place the funds in the right bucket. And then third, once we've done that, it may be time to reallocate tactically. You know, tactically means you have to take action. You have to do that. Reallocating of the funds is very important, especially long term, making sure that you're diversified well within the portfolio and that you're taking time to do that. Again, the life cycle funds will reallocate for you quarterly if you choose to use those funds within the TSP portfolio. And then lastly, you know, this is so important. You cannot go with the flow. Do not go with the flow. You know, by going with the flow, you oftentimes lock in some of your losses, and you don't want to do that. The chart that you can see on the screen gives a great example of several market downturns from 1999 to 2010, where investors left the equity markets during those downturns and went to more conservative type investments such as G Fund and placed those funds there. The issue with that is we stayed there in G Fund. We never got back in, and we tried to time the market. And whenever you can find someone who can time the market, please send them my way, because I need to talk to them. I found it's almost impossible to time the market. You have to have a steady hand, and you have to take emotions out of that investment cycle in order to do that. And by doing that, you cannot go with the flow.
I think that's great advice. I think you're discussing emotion versus educated information makes a difference for somebody, just like we do when we're looking at numbers as far as what your pension will be and how that can affect your decisions. In fact, I talked to somebody the other day, and he said, I just can't retire based on emotion. And he's right. You have to retire on emotion and also on your finances. And so right now, that fear about TSP and where your funds are right now and what could and couldn't have happened to them in the last several weeks, I have been encouraging people to just look at TSP, look at where you're at right now, because I've also spoken to a lot of people who just said, I can't look. What would you say to them?
I would say, you know, looking is okay. First, I'm going to go back to what I said before. If you have a budget built, if you know your income needs, that really seems to help ease some of that anxiety and fear that comes along with market downturns. So getting with someone who can provide that to you, working with a financial professional who can work on you and your family's goals as it relates to budget and income planning long term is very beneficial. So looking at TSP, I think you have to look in order to diagnose maybe where there's some opportunities for improvement. One of those opportunities for improvement would be, right now you can purchase CS&I funds much cheaper than you could have 6 or 8 weeks ago. So by all means, please continue to contribute. And if contributions or something cash flow support more, maybe you contribute a little heavier right now because prices are lower than they were. So again, we want to buy low, right, and sell high, not the opposite. So continue to contribute, continue to do that. Also, it may be a good time to look at some tax planning long term as it relates to Roth TSP. If you have outside assets that are not in the TSP, maybe Roth conversions is appropriate at this time. So I think there's some positive efficiencies that can be gained by looking at your portfolio.
I think that's all very good advice. And I think just like anybody who is not feeling well and, has to go and see a doctor, see a professional to find out what's going on, sometimes you just need somebody to really sit down who understands the federal benefits system and can look long term and help you, to make a decision as far as what can we do now to help in the future. I think all of that is very good advice. So, Tommy, you were talking a little bit about CSNI and purchasing them low. And my question to you was, obviously, it does help to have somebody help you decide if that is the right thing for you as an investor and for your long-term planning. But my question is, how often can you make a change in your funds in the thrift savings plan?
You can make those changes monthly if you choose to do that, taking the time to look at it and make those changes. It typically takes a pay cycle or so to get those funds in line in good order to do that. But I would not recommend making changes often. I think that's where, you start getting in and out of the funds, you're moving, you're doing it, unless you have a really good, solid investment background, you doing that may be detrimental to your portfolio. But I do recommend you reevaluating your overall investment picture, your risk tolerance, and then making those changes appropriately.
So it sounds like, Tommy, some of the most important things that our federal employee family can be doing right now would be reevaluating your budget, understanding and preparing tax planning for the future, and also knowing that the thrift savings plan and investing is a long-term thing. And as you could see still right here on our chart, there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, and that's why it is long-term. It's not something that a short-term investment. So I really appreciate your advice and your information today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Last thing I would just like to add is the feelings that you're having right now as it relates to your TSP, your investments, they're completely normal. And the thoughts that you have, we all have. The issue really is, what do we do with those thoughts? How do we respond? And right now is a great opportunity for you and your family to sit down and take positive steps for your long-term future. Don't focus necessarily on a return number. Focus on what's needed for income in the future, and that will help direct the goal as it relates to your decision making in your investment portfolio.
That's great. Thank you, Tommy. And reach out to Retirement Benefits Institute, because we do have various ways to help you know and understand and begin that planning for retirement. Thank you and have a great day.